Effect podcast, where we have conversations how to help organizations create positive workplace experiences. I am your host, Michael Dickerson, and we have a great guest this morning. Jeff Lipscum is a coach for business builders. He takes business leaders and teams and shows them what their talents for business building look like and shows them how to get the most for the use of their talents and the talents of their team. He has a passion for helping business builders succeed through the knowing of developing their business talents. Thank you for coming on the podcast.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thanks,
Nice
Mike.
to meet you, man.
You too. It's
I
great.
heard a lot about you, and so I said I got to have him on the podcast. So I reached out to you and asked you, said, "Hey, could you come on the podcast?" Especially when I find out that you are somebody who is definitely into strengths, something I'm very passionate about. So definitely appreciate you coming on the podcast.
I appreciate that, the offer.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit. I know you said one of the things that you talk about is you being an executive business coach, which you're very specific about what you're doing, because I know executive coaching is really huge now. And so what is one of the things that you're trying to do when you work with entrepreneurs and business leaders in terms of some coaching? So what drew you to coaching?
Well, so I got drawn into coaching by just a happenstance meeting with a fellow coach here in Oklahoma City. And through that, she encouraged me to get coaching training to be a coach. I just had always coached people my entire life. I literally can remember all the way back in high school saying I wanted to coach people, but I didn't want to coach athletics, because in high school your coaches were either a history teacher or science teacher. And I was like, oh, I don't want to do that. So and so that was my experience with coaching. But then I thought about going to psychology, but I've always said I'd never wanted to just hear about someone. I say it this way: I never want to hear about your dog dying and talk about it for the next 10 years. It was like, okay, let's find resolution. I have empathy.
So you didn't want to be a therapist?
I didn't want to be a therapist because I didn't want to hear about it. I always say to people, it's like, okay, I get there's the grieving process, but at some point, like, we have to just land on, okay, the dog is gone. What are we going to do? So from there, and that was in the back of my mind. So when we met, I got into a coaching program. Through that coaching program, came out of it, had fellow people here in Oklahoma City that were going in the same program. And I knew just from my past experience in advertising that I knew there were certain things that business owners are good at, and there's some things they just aren't good at. I just knew that. And there were certain things I knew that I needed help with, and things I knew I didn't want to do. So I wanted to have people with me to help. And so my fellow coaches coming through the program, we're doing the same thing, and that's how we got into, of course, strengths training, strengths coaching. But then that's how we discovered, my fellow coach found another assessment from Gallup, which was the builder profile. Now that was the one that just really, I say, changed the game for us. It changed the game for me, because using strengths is, as you know, is how we communicate, how we want to communicate, those kind of things. But the builder profile told us something a little bit different about in the business environment, in the business arena. It actually told us what it is that you do intuitively and instinctively in business through your strengths. So you may use your strengths, but then what is it that you do in business that actually makes you be successful in business through your strengths?
And that was a part of the coaching program that you were in.
Yes. So after I came out of my training, it was initially just strengths training, strengths coaching. But the discovery of that tool then led us into this whole other realm of, wait a minute, what really happens in business? And this is where we really saw where people use their strengths. We have, through understanding strengths, is you may have a strength of, I have some friends that have input and learner. Okay, well, it depends on how you use it in a business environment. It may be totally different how you use it in your life.
Absolutely. So let's go back to strengths. So let's dive into what strengths are, because I think you got a couple of books here.
I do.
And I've read 2 of them, but I haven't read Born to Build. And so I really want to talk about, because I think people have a misunderstanding of strengths, because if people really understood the history of and the research behind the strengths finders, at one time they were going to call it talent finders. And so they moved away from talent finders to strength finders. Because you help them discover their strengths and through your talents, but through maximizing your talents, then it becomes a strength. And so I really want to touch on that to give people an idea that's listening. really, what is a strength and what does the Gallup strength say? What does the Strength Finder say?
Yeah, so through the strengths, it's there are 34 unique strengths, as they would call them, talents too. But the 34 unique strengths that we all share. We just share them in different combinations. And that's the great thing about them is our combination is the development of who we are through our life experiences, some of the things of how maybe we're born. But we through our own development of our own life, we then determine how they're arranged 1 through 34. Now, Gallup went into the research to find out, okay, these commonalities keep showing up in people and keep showing up in people. And they actually were able to land on 34. And through research and discovery, they found out that we all share these 34 just in different ways. And so that was pretty phenomenal. But then you're right, as you get to understand how your strengths are and operate, then you actually can understand how we really excel with them and how they really help us. They help us in every aspect of our life, what we do. At the same time, whenever we get maybe frustrated or get in challenge, sometimes our strengths will, we like to say, kind of go in overdrive, or some people say go in the basement. But it's just like when we get overactive, it's just we go to our kind of our kind of protective state, and that goes in our strengths. Our strengths become, I kind of call it, our strengths are our sword and our shield. So you use it to take on the world, and you also take it to defend yourself.
Absolutely.
So
that's good.
That's exactly how I look at the strengths. It's your sword and your shield both, and you use them effectively. And sometimes if you get kind of overactive with the sword, you can cause a lot of damage. And if you get too wrapped up getting behind the shield, then you aren't maybe being as proactive in life as you need to be. You're trying to be too defensive.
Yeah, and what really drew me to the strength, so a lot of people don't know the story, but I'll tell it. So I had, I'm a social worker, so my background is in social work.
Yeah.
And I had a young man who was a client of mine. And so I used to work in a high school. I used to work at an alternative high school.
Okay.
And so he was a client of mine. And at alternative high school, of course, we know they have a lot of behavioral issues. Sometimes they have not going to school. They're not really performing well in class. So I had this one young man, his name was Jose. And so Jose walks into my office one day, and this report card. So this is when they used to give out report cards. You couldn't give them online.
Right.
They give you a physical
Take
paper.
it home.
Yeah. And so he gives me his report card. He goes, I just want to see it. And he's struggling in school bad. I look at his report card. He has all F's and 1 B. And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, oh man, how do I work with this? So what I did was I looked at that B and I said, I see you have a B. You really like art, because that's what the B was in. All the rest of the classes, math, science, English, all those were F's, but in art, it was a B. And I said, tell you what, can you do this for me? Can you just keep going to that class? Let's talk to your other teachers, and let's see if we can keep you in school, because he was about to drop out.
Yeah.
And that art class ended up helping him stay in school because he really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
All his other grades came up, not to what I think they should be, but they came up and they were sufficient.
Yeah.
And what it pointed out to me is, I really focus on what was right with him instead of what was wrong, and looking at areas of strengths, because there was nothing else that I could look at.
Right.
And this only thing that was sticking out was
was
this art that he had a B in, and it made me dive into looking at strengths, like really focusing on people's strengths. And so that's when I got into the Strength Finder. And when I really start reading about the Strength Finder, really getting into, we need to really start focusing on what is right with people instead of what is wrong, because for so long in society, all we have been told is just look at things that are wrong with you and try to make those better, which we know most people are not successful in their deficits. They're successful in things that are right with them. That's what drew me to
absolutely.
Strengths.
Yeah. And when Mr. Clifton, in his first book, he has a story of the rabbit going to school. I don't know if you read that story, where he's talking about the rabbit goes to school with all the other animals, and he's excited for school. Then it's first day at school, and going to school, they have different activities. And so he talks about going, the first day of school was running class, and came home and was so excited after the first day because they had running class. And then the next day he goes to the swimming class. And of course, it's not running, so rabbits aren't really the best swimmers.
Right.
And then they had climbing class. And then about 3 or 4 days, and he comes home, tells his parents, he's like, I'm just frustrated, and I don't like school anymore. Kind of like your student there. And the teacher then he goes back to school. The teacher then tells him, well, you know what? You're really good at running, but since you're good at running, we'll just like not run anymore. But you don't climb real well, so we'll put you in the climb and flying classes more. You need to climb and fly more. And it was like, oh my gosh, this is like, that's exactly what, to your point, that's exactly what we do. But we don't look at what are people's natural ways of being, where they thrive, and find out what that is. And then we find it. Let's get people really acclimated to really knowing what it is they do well. Give them all the knowledge and skill in that space, in that area. Yeah, you may have to do math, English, and science.
Absolutely.
But we also realize that, and if you're an artist, you're an artist. Like let's find ways to explore that for you,
right?
And then bring that out in who you are, and then find a way. If it's something that he could turn to a career of some sort. Right. How can you do it?
Right. Yeah, and that's one of the stories that stuck out to me too, is the Rudy story he tells in the book, in the Strength Finder book, about, we see Rudy work really hard to be this football player for Notre Dame, and he puts a lot of work into that, but he really can't maximize it because he doesn't have the talent there.
Right.
Eventually, everybody knows and seen the movie. He gets in one play at the end of the movie, but all the hard work that he put into it wouldn't be as a person who has that talent be able to maximize it, as opposed to Rudy. He's not going to really maximize it. And so one of the myths that we've been told, you can be anything you want, do anything you want, as long as you work hard at it. But the reality of it is you can't do anything you want. You have to do things that you have a proclivity in, that you have the ability in, that you have the talent in. And let's try to maximize those areas.
Absolutely.
Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. No, absolutely. I always say this. I say we've been taught from a young age. I say, unfortunately, we've been told a story of life. I say everybody knows the little engine that could. I said, you do realize that that's a fallacy. I said, the little engine could. You read the story, and he climbed the hill, and he chug, got to the top of the hill, and we celebrate the top of the hill. Only thing is what they didn't tell you is that's the first hill, and he hadn't got to a mountain yet. And there are mountains coming.
Yeah.
You know what he really was? He really was a trolley. He was a trolley trying to be a locomotive. He needed to be a trolley. Be the best trolley he could be.
Absolutely.
Don't try and be a locomotive. Like you said, Rudy was not going to go to the NFL. I love the story, love the effort, but everything we are told in life is about hard work, determination, stick-to-itiveness.
Absolutely.
Every book you read in a bookstore is all based around that. If it's a coaching book, if it's a selling book, you learn from people who were great at it, and then what happens is we are told that if you just read this book, then you can go out there and start doing it.
Right.
And I tell people, this is not the Matrix.
Right.
This is not the Matrix. You don't download it and all of a sudden become great at something.
Yeah.
You have certain abilities.
And it can lead people down a path that is not good for them. They keep putting effort and time into something that's not working out, that they don't have a talent in, that they don't have a strength in.
Yeah.
And so I think one of the things for me that really was just life-changing is to really looking at that Strength Finder and discovering what my abilities was, what my talents was, and what avenue that I want to put that energy toward us that I felt like that I could maximize. Because I couldn't, I want to play baseball.
Yeah.
But I was an average baseball player. I wasn't going to the MLB. I wasn't going to be a professional. So, coming to that conclusion, say, hey, I have other talents. I have other abilities. I have other things that I think I'm gifted at, and I want to put it towards that area. Absolutely. So the Strength Finder was, it was just really eye-opening to me, and I really liked it because it was a small book. It was small.
True.
So tell us about what that means in terms of the builder profile for you to using the strips.
Yeah. So by using both Strength Finders and the Builder Profile actually looks at what are your business building talents for business. Strengths you use your strengths all the time. Being a baseball player, I describe it this way. The builder tells us, are you a pitcher or not? Is that the best role for business? So we'll say are you a pitcher or are you a shortstop? This is what it tells us. Now, the strengths tells us what kind of pitcher are you? Are you a fastball pitcher? Are you a knuckleball pitcher? Are you a curveball pitcher?
Okay.
That's your strengths. Okay. Now, a shortstop may share your strengths, but he's a shortstop. This tells us what role you use your actual strengths in, your Clifton strengths, in actually accomplishing the things that you do well. Because what happens is you take a pitcher trying to be a hitter sometimes, not always the best hitter.
Right.
He doesn't have that eye. Though he can throw the ball, in a different position, he doesn't always play that as well. Well, he has maybe the same strengths. So I say again, you may have input learner, but it doesn't mean that everybody who has input learner can do the exact same thing. So it's actually helps us to understand when people get into business why you have people in an office environment that may share strengths, but they just approach the business in a totally different way.
Yeah.
And then what we historically have done and seen is, oh, well, these people have influencing strengths. Oh, they'll be great at maybe sales, or they're great thinkers and they're good at putting on a project together. Some are, but not all. And that can then lead us to bad job placement.
How do you differentiate if they are influenced, if they should be in sales or not in sales? Like, so how do you get to those little details?
So that's what we discovered in the builder profile. We came in through strength training. We came in with some assumptions, thinking, oh, if you're an influencer, then you're just great in sales, or you're great at influence people to buy or lead a company. Well, then we saw is just because people had a strength doesn't mean they used it in the business environment. And I use sports analogies all the time. So like in baseball, you knew guys that were some maybe a mild, meek manner, didn't talk a whole lot, got on the field and you're like, oh my God, they're like a beast.
Absolutely.
Well, that beast doesn't walk through the halls and you don't see it every day. But I always call it when the lights are on the field.
Yeah, they perform.
Yeah,
absolutely.
But they turn those things on, what they have. Now, the guy who is maybe that talks the most, does all that, isn't always the team leader. Sometimes it's the quiet guy, and when they get to get the rah-rah and that's the quiet guy sits in the corner, he's the one that leads the team.
Yeah.
That is the talent.
Yeah.
Talent is innate. Different than strengths. It's innate, just like you see someone who kind of intuitively knows, they just move. And you ask them, well, how did you know to do that? They really can't tell you.
Yeah, they just knew.
They just knew.
Yeah.
That's what the builder tells us. So we're talking about, are you good in sales? People who are innate in sales don't ever, like anything else, they don't go to sales training courses. They're just good salespeople.
They're just good sales.
Now, they may go to it to enhance their ability. I say you're maybe an 85.
And you can build other skills behind it, right?
You build skills behind it, like, to be in like I said, a Major League Baseball player. In high school, you aren't, but you have the propensity as opposed to the guy next to you who doesn't. They see it. Now we have to develop that to see if it carries itself
and those individuals become extremely successful because not only is it innate and you have the talent, they maximize it by building other skills,
the skills
on
and
top
knowledge
of it
that go
that
around
they already have.
Right.
And so I think that's really important in terms of strength. So that's where the strengths come in at.
Absolutely.
That's we discovered what your talent were, what innate abilities that you have, that intuitiveness that you talk about. And then on top of that, we're putting skills, we're putting knowledge, we're working hard, and now we're 10X and we're maximizing whatever we have.
Absolutely. So like I said, if your strength, if your Clifton strength is like I say, knowledge, or I'm gonna say is learner and input, and you have an ability to influence people, that's what you use to influence people is your knowledge and input. So you're actually learning things to influence people that way. I may influence people by my ability to get them to my ability to maybe woo someone or communicate. You use it through some thinking strengths. I do it through influencing, but we do the same thing. Again, we're both pitchers. You curve ball, I fast pitch.
Absolutely.
And that was the distinction. So once we see this, now we can go into an organization and say, because you're wanting to know as a business owner, if you don't maybe have an eye for talent, which is the thing that stands out in businesses. Think about business. If you think about business like sports, when you hire someone, we blame the person we hired as a bad job fit, quote unquote. But the reality is, if we have bad hires time after time and time in baseball, that person gets fired.
Absolutely.
It's not the player's fault.
Yeah.
It's the person hiring the player's fault.
Yeah.
But in business, we keep blaming the player and not the person who's looking at the players.
Yeah.
But we have never thought to assess that person's ability to judge talent.
Yeah.
We just now put it back on the person. So it goes into management the same way. Oh, it's not me, it's the employees. Well, maybe it's your management style. It's your coaching style. Again,
yeah. Where's the coach come in at?
So for me, yeah.
Yeah. So you as an executive coach, where you come in at? What you say?
So with that, our approach is first helping someone understand what is your talent and your role. Mm-hmm. So we look at a few things: what's your role in your business, what's your best role fit, what's your talent in business, then what's your strengths. So we do a 1, 2, 3, because if I can help show someone what their best role is, because it's how you think in business. And then how your talent applies into your strengths. Now we get the appropriate team to put around you. So then you have the right person who's playing. Maybe you're a shortstop. You need a pitcher. Mm-hmm. You need a catcher. You need a first baseman. Who are the people you need around you to do that? And that is where the coaching comes in. So we actually then start coaching up your personal strengths that you have, how you're using your strengths to let you see it. Because that's, as I'm sure you saw with yourself, is once you understood what your strengths were, then you understood, oh, that's why I do that.
Yeah.
Well, yes.
And then once you understand your own strengths, mm-hmm. you understand now where I can plug in my blind spots.
Right. Right. Yeah. And so we go to the builder to do the same thing. Mm-hmm. So your innate ability are the things that you can't really describe. It's like, especially in business, you'll see people say, oh, we should just do this. And they'll say, why? I don't know. We just should. And when people are more right than wrong in those situations, that's really where talent shows up. Mm-hmm. Again, if you look at athletes on the field, you see it happen, because you'll see guys do things like, he shouldn't be doing that, mm-hmm. but he did it and it worked.
Yeah.
Well, why? Like, how did he know that ball was coming at a certain speed, at a certain angle?
Because the ability and the talent that he had. But somebody else couldn't be able to do that.
Right. And just because I understand the mechanics of it, just because I understand the mathematics of it, doesn't mean that I can now then go up there and do it. Well, that's what we do when we go to the bookstore.
That's like people trying to, in basketball now, trying to shoot half-court shots like Steph Curry.
Right.
Like, no, he don't have the talent to do
that is.
Yeah, like,
exactly.
He has the talent to do that. But here's what people don't understand about that. Like, he practices those shots.
He does.
Like, if you watch him, because I went to a couple of games and seen him play the Thunder, like, he actually practices those shots.
And that's so people will ask me this. They'll say, okay, can I improve my talent? I said, you